In this video I'm going to be looking into some of the rumours, theories and statements that have come out in the last week regarding the state of F1 and the teams. I've been trying to do this for about a week, but every time I've started to try and put a script together, another story or rumour has surfaced and it's made a bit of a mockery of my carefully drawn up ideas, and I've ended up starting again. So if this feels rushed, it's because I actually want to try and finish it before I end up having to rewrite the whole thing all over again. So with that in mind, let's get into it. Several stories have come out in just the last 24 hours that are potentially serious concerns for F1, so as I need to start somewhere, I'm going to start with Williams. We already knew they were in trouble after last season. Finishing last in the Constructors 2 years in a row reduced them to ending the 2019 season with a loss of $13 million. It was severe enough that in December they were forced to sell their advanced engineering division, which previously helped support the main racing business. To help build up resources and prepare for the new regulations, they'd borrowed an estimated $50 million from Michael Latifi, father of Williams driver Nicholas Latifi. The cost of not repaying this loan, though, is severe. Collateral for it includes the historic car collection, the factory, and even their racing licence. Effectively, Williams have gone all in, and if they lose, then Latifi will own the team, or at least that was the state of play up to Thursday the 28th. On Friday, the announcement that they'd split effective immediately from title sponsor Rocket and were, to quote the press release, undertaking a review of all strategic options available to the company. Though they'd stated that they'd remain funded and ready to resume racing when the calendar allows in 2020. What this means is the business is either wholly or partly up for sale, which must have been a very difficult decision for the Williams family to make, as they've made a point of remaining fiercely independent in the sport, for better or for worse. Claire Williams has come out in the press and stated that Frank has always ensured he puts the team, business and our people first, and that's what we're doing now. While this is probably a wise move, all things considered, the timing itself is poor, as businesses are struggling under the effects of COVID-19, and there will be less companies willing to part with the sort of money required to buy into a Formula One team than there may have been a year or two ago, especially as any other suitors would almost certainly have to pay the $50 million back to Michael Latifi before they could even think about putting in money and investment into the team itself. As ever, Twitter went crazy suggesting possible new owners. The most realistic possibility is perhaps Russian businessman Dmitry Mazepin, whose son Nikita currently races in Formula 2. F1.com suggested that it held talks with Williams back in April, and had previously tried to buy Force India before Lawrence Stroll's consortium got the nod. With an estimated net worth of $7.1 billion, cost wouldn't be a barrier to entry. In the short term, we can see where Williams end up going, but the odds are they'll potentially be racing under a Russian or Canadian flag from next season. We'll have a look at Renault now. On the face of it, Renault should be secure, but up until Friday it looked anything but. Though they're part of the world's second largest car production consortium, along with Nissan and Mitsubishi, the strings holding the separate elements together have started to unravel since the bizarre episode where their former CEO was set to go on trial for financial misconduct and jumped bail before ending up in another country, and is currently an international fugitive. As well as parent company stresses, the F1 team has had to deal with the embarrassment of continually being beaten by customer teams in recent seasons, first by Red Bull and then by McLaren, which has made the F1 program actually damaging to their prestige. Currently they're recording their first loss in decades of €141 million, with the effects of the COVID crisis seeing reductions in their orders of some models up to 90%. Suggestions were put forward earlier in the week that the company may even end up being nationalised, with the French government already owning 15% of the company. But Renault's ruled this out as a possibility, while not ruling out that it might still require financial assistance to the tune of €5 billion, according to the BBC. General consensus seems to be that the Williams Formula One team could yet again find itself up for sale. And who did Planet F1 suggest to be their potential saviour? None other than Dmitry Mazepin. However, in a statement on Friday, the Renault Group laid out its plans going forward, confirming they'll stay in F1, although this came with the additional points that the group itself would be cutting 15,000 jobs worldwide and needed to cut costs by €2 billion. While F1 can offer good visibility for a company, this only works if that team is performing well. And if Renault don't improve their performance in the next few years, the company's track record of cutting their losses isn't reassuring. Next up, for no real apparent reason, we're going to look at Haas. And currently, they're one of the quieter teams on the grid. The gossip around them is almost non-existent. They were a team that needed to come out of the box well at the start of the year to prove to Gene Haas that the investment in the team is worthwhile. At the moment, the word from the camp is that Gene Haas wants to see it through, and their staff, along with the other UK-based teams, went on furlough and weren't laid off. The uncertainty is a problem for a team who are already under pressure. Due to the new, unique way that they're structured, though, word is that they fancy their chances in the brave new world that's coming. The suggestion is they feel they can get more for the results for the money than the rivals moving forward. Moving on to Red Bull and AlphaTauri now. One of the only teams I feel will have minimal changes made to them. The company itself being an energy drinks brand are unlikely to feel the same financial pinch as the car manufacturing rivals. The question mark hangs more over AlphaTauri and whether the second team makes sense, promoting a brand selling clothes that aren't exactly cheap at a time when luxuries might get sacrificed for cheaper alternatives. I mean, I'm running worst case scenario. There's absolutely no reason to believe that Red Bull will change strategy as far as Formula 1 goes, but there have been more unlikely things come to pass. Mercedes and Racing Point is a strange situation. And looking at the financial picture, Daimler shares were reported at approximately €75 in January of 2018, but dropped to €23 in March 20th, 2020. It was reported by various sites in November 2019 that the Mercedes team could be up for sale, with potential buyers including Roger Penske and that man again, Dmitry Mazepin. Like, how much does this guy want a Formula 1 team? Travel on 6 months from there, and the situation has got even more confusing with will Wolff, won't Wolff be leading Mercedes going forward? As he's now bought shares in Aston Martin, will he be moving there? Interestingly, Aston Martin's new CEO is the former CEO of Mercedes AMG division, who had been supplying Aston with engines for several years, and Mercedes already have shares in Aston as an exchange. At this point, it gets even more confusing, as Mercedes have said they'll still be involved in a works level, but talk is that Lawrence Stroll could buy their 70% controlling stake in the current F1 team, with Wolff keeping hold of the other 30% he currently has, and that Stroll would do that by trading shares in Aston Martin, which could then give Merck a strong claim to having a works outfit in F1 if Aston Martin took over the existing Mercedes operation, allowing Mercedes to have their fun in Formula E. Meaning everyone's happy. Well, except the people at Racing Point, who could always get sold on to Dmitry Mazepin. I'd like to tell you that this was all some crazy scheme that I made up, but it wasn't me. Mercedes have recently called foul on it anyway, as of Friday they clearly decided it was all getting a bit too silly. Still, they said there's no smoke without fire, so while I strongly believe the two teams will exist to go boldly forward into F1's next evolution, we still could look very different to how they look now. So, McLaren next. And what's the major differences between Williams and McLaren? And backing and investment. And occasionally this can really highlight the differences between two historic teams who spent the large part of 2018 racing each other. Williams' $50 million loan has potentially placed them in trouble, but reports from Sky News suggest that, having failed to get a $150 million loan from the government, the McLaren Group shareholders are pledging $300 million to support the team. And even that doesn't seem to have been enough, though, as McLaren are already looking at raising a further $275 million, according to Reuters, by mortgaging the MTC itself as well as a large number of their heritage cars. Sadly, the need for this has become even more evident, with news on Thursday of 1,200 job cuts across the McLaren companies, accounting for a quarter of their total workforce. In F1 News itself, McLaren are currently looking very pleased. Zak Brown has just been very vocal in support of the budget cuts, and while 70 of the job cuts are from the F1 team, he feels they're in a strong position going forward. New signer Daniel Ricciardo, a proven race winner, doesn't hurt with their current mantra of fearlessly forward. So, who have I forgotten? Well, the news coming from Ferrari and Alfa Romeo is few and far between. Ferrari are keen to, understandably, point out the various incubator parts and masks that they've been producing, rather than dwell too much on the cost of lockdown and how it will have affected their business. Although an article released from Reuters suggested that while their profit was likely to be down by half, they'd still be in profit. With a changing world as a result of the COVID situation and the likely recession that will almost certainly follow, it's had enough of an effect that even Ferrari management agreed to the lower cost cap the FIA has asked to be implemented, and that would have almost been unthinkable 6 months ago. To consider Alfa Romeo's position, we have to look at Fiat's position. And currently they're in the middle of a probably quite costly merger with PSA, the company that owned Peugeot among others, which will make them one of the biggest car manufacturers in Europe and the fourth largest in the world. The idea being behind this that they'll allow them to share more technology with regard to batteries and electric cars, as they look towards the future. However, while they're strong in Europe, both parties in the merger do poorly in both the US and growing markets like China. So currently Fiat is looking into getting a €6.3 million guaranteed loan from the Italian government, which according to Politico, they are sceptical about awarding due to Fiat having recently removed its headquarters from Turin to Amsterdam. Where this affects Alfa Romeo is simple. If Renault are having trouble justifying having one team in F1 currently, with the loans and hurdles they're having to negotiate, can Fiat justify having two when it's also asking its government for a loan of multiple billions, and the second team, whilst called Alfa Romeo, is based in Switzerland? I guess that's an answer no one other than Fiat can answer. Looking towards the knock-on effect on tracks, I'm going to limit my thoughts to Silverstone. We're less than 2 months away and currently are no closer to knowing if there'll definitely be a British Grand Prix this year or not. The fact that it will be behind closed doors if it does run is enough to cause major cause for concern. 140,000 tickets are sold for race day, totalling over 300,000 during the 3.5 days the event is held for. Up to this point in the year, there's been no racing of any kind at the circuit, and it's almost certainly going to lose other flagship events like MotoGP, WEC, and recently cancelled Silverstone Classic weekend as well. Silverstone have been desperately asking people to roll their tickets over to next year to help them get through this year. What does that leave them for next year, though? Providing things are in any way back to normal, Silverstone will have to pay a full hosting price while having hardly any grandstand tickets available because people who have had them for this year will have rolled them over. Silverstone could be in trouble for a number of years as a result. So what help have the teams and organisations received? In the UK, several other teams have placed their workers on furlough, and some of the teams have received advance payments from Liberty Media to help in the current conditions. Importantly for the teams, Liberty are exploring other avenues they can in regard to getting the season up and running again. The most important thing that they've achieved, though, is the 2021 cost cap. This limits the spending, excluding drivers and the 3 most highly paid staff members, to $145 million in 2021, $140 million in 2022, and $135 million from 2023. There's also a sliding scale being introduced, limiting time allowed in wind tunnel use, with the teams who finish lower allowed a higher percentage of time. If you're a team boss, it's easier to argue with boards of directors or to secure loans when you can point to a future of the sport that should be more competitive. In the meantime, measures are also in place to try and reduce costs going into the 2021 season, with chassis, suspension and gearboxes staying frozen, and a token system put in place to limit the number of modifications that can be introduced over the season. Liberty are aware that, while they have no money coming in and the financial of F1 has fallen significantly, if they don't help the teams and the tracks, by the time they're able to return to racing, they might not have a product left to sell. The financial damage to teams, tracks and F1 business as a whole is sustained is like nothing in the history of the sport before. It's by no means over when the teams eventually get racing. However, without the racing, there is no sellable product or way for the teams to promote their sponsors, and that's why it's less a case of whether F1 will go racing in 2020, but when. If Formula 1 can have a season this year, then all the teams should make it through to the following season, albeit perhaps not under the same ownership. With the help of Liberty and the furlough scheme in place, that will have reduced the staff costs. The erosion of F1 can hopefully be reduced. Anyway, as always, thank you for watching. I'm David Noble. If you found this video interesting, then please like the video, and subscriptions are always nice if you'd like to. In the meantime, goodbye for now.